In an ancient cave in Iraq, scientists found a skeleton that makes absolutely no biological sense. The man was deaf, partially blind, missing an arm, and riddled with disease. He couldn't hunt, he couldn't fight, and he couldn't run. In the brutal world of 50,000 years ago, he should have died as a child, but he lived to be an old man. How? Right now, getting sick is an inconvenience. You wake up with a scratchy throat, you feel a fever coming on, you complain, you take a couple of pills, you crawl back under a warm blanket, and you call out of work. You binge a show, you drink clean water from a tap. 3 days later, you're back to normal. You never once think that you are actually going to die. Now take all of that away. The pills, the tap, the blanket, the walls. You are 50,000 years ago. The world is freezing. The dirt floor of your shelter is damp. And that scratch in your throat isn't an inconvenience. It is a ticking clock. For millions of years, the rules of nature have been very simple and very cruel. If you are weak, you die. If you are slow, you are eaten. We spend a lot of time talking about the giant monsters that hunted our ancestors, the saber-toothed cats, the short-faced bears. But the truth is, the most relentless killers weren't animals. They were invisible, microscopic predators, bacteria, viruses, parasites, infection. You can't stab a fever with a spear. You can't throw a rock at a staph infection. You can't outrun cholera. Look at the animal kingdom. A wolf that shatters its leg doesn't get a cast. It starves to death because it can't hunt. A gazelle that catches a crippling virus is left behind by the herd because a slow gazelle gets the rest of them killed. Sickness in the wild is an immediate, unforgiving death sentence. The group cannot afford to carry dead weight. Survival is a ruthless math equation, and a sick animal equals 0. By every law of nature, humans should have operated the exact same way. If you got sick, you should have been left behind. The tribe had to keep moving. The winter was coming. Food was scarce. A coughing, feverish, crippled human was a liability that could doom everyone. But that's not what happened. When archaeologists dig up our ancestors, they don't find a history of abandonment. They find a history of impossible survival. Let's go back to that cave in Iraq. Shanidar Cave. The skeleton is known to science as Shanidar I. He was a Neanderthal who lived around 50,000 years ago. When scientists examined his bones, they were stunned. The right side of his body was shattered. His arm had been withered, broken in multiple places, and amputated above the elbow. Healed. The side of his face was crushed, meaning he was likely blind in one eye. Healed. His ear canals were blocked by bone growths. Profoundly deaf. Healed. He survived for years like this. Decades, even. Think about what that actually means. This man could not carry his own weight. He could not throw a spear. He couldn't see a predator coming from his blind side, and he couldn't hear a warning shout. In a strict biological ledger, he was useless. But he didn't starve. He didn't freeze. Because someone fed him. Someone chewed his food when he couldn't. Someone walked beside him on his blind side to protect him. Someone carried his share of the firewood. They kept him alive, not for days, but for years. And it wasn't just him. The earth is filled with these stories. In Spain, at a site called El Cedron, scientists found the remains of another Neanderthal. This one had a horrific dental abscess, an infection in the jaw that would have caused agonizing, blinding pain. He couldn't eat solid food. The infection was spreading. But when researchers scraped the hardened plaque off his fossilized teeth and analyzed the DNA, they found something that completely rewrote history. They found the DNA of a poplar tree. Poplar bark contains salicylic acid, the exact same active ingredient we use today to make aspirin. But they didn't stop there. They also found traces of penicillium mold, the natural source of penicillin. This ancient human, 50,000 years before Alexander Fleming discovered antibiotics in a modern lab, was self-medicating. He was eating natural painkillers and antibiotics to fight off a lethal infection. They weren't just dumb brutes waiting to die in the dark. They were observing. They were experimenting. They understood that certain plants made the pain stop. They understood that certain molds fought the fever. They were passing this knowledge down. But knowing which bark to chew only goes so far. Because medicine isn't just about chemistry. It's about time. When you are sick, your body needs time to fight. You need rest. But in a nomadic hunter-gatherer society, resting means you stop moving. And stopping means starving. Enter the Ramido Cave in Italy. Here, archaeologists found a teenager who lived about 10,000 years ago. He suffered from a severe form of dwarfism. His arms and legs were incredibly short. He couldn't keep up with a hunting party. He couldn't walk long distances when the tribe needed to migrate following the herds. He was a physical anchor on a group that needed to be fast, but he lived into his late teens. The tribe didn't leave him behind to be eaten. They slowed down. They carried him when he couldn't walk. They shared their hard-earned meat with a boy who could never hunt for them. This is the paradigm shift. This is the secret. We love to think of human survival as a story of weapons. We think we survived because we invented the sharpest spears, or because we figured out how to control fire, or because we mapped the stars. We think our greatest tool was our violent intellect, but our greatest survival tool was entirely invisible. It wasn't the spear. It was empathy. When you got sick 50,000 years ago, you were terrified. You lay in the dirt, your body burning, knowing that a predator could smell your weakness. But you weren't abandoned. Someone brought you water in a folded leaf. Someone crushed up willow bark and fed it to you to break your fever. Someone sat awake while the rest of the camp slept, keeping the fire roaring so the hyenas wouldn't come near you. The anthropologist Margaret Mead was once asked by a student what she considered to be the very first sign of civilization in human culture. The student expected her to talk about a clay pot, or a grinding stone, or maybe an arrowhead. She didn't say any of those things. Mead said that the first sign of civilization in an ancient culture was a healed femur, a thigh bone that had been broken and then healed. She explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, you cannot drink from the river, you cannot hunt. You are meat for the prowling beasts. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to knit back together. A healed femur shows that someone stayed with you. Someone bound up your wound. Someone carried you to a safe place. Someone brought you food and water for months while you recovered. Compassion, she said, was the first true sign of civilization. And here is the part that gets me. Here is the reality of our modern world. Look at us now. We have MRI machines. We have sterile operating rooms with HEPA filters. We have pharmacies on every single corner. We mapped the human genome. We eradicated smallpox. We defeated the microscopic predators that terrified our ancestors. But look at how we heal. When we get sick today, we isolate. We lock ourselves in separate rooms. We are the most medically advanced society in the history of the planet, and yet we are dying of loneliness. We outsource our care to machines, to monitors, to strangers in scrubs who check our charts and move on to the next bed. We have built an entire world where you don't need anyone else to survive a fever. You just need a credit card and a prescription. 50,000 years ago, a severe infection might have killed you. The odds were against you. The dirt was cold. The night was dark. But if you survived, because someone who loved you refused to let you die alone. They pulled you back from the edge with their own hands. We invented medicine. We conquered winter. We built walls so thick that predators are nothing but myths we put in movies. But somewhere along the way, between the campfire and the hospital room, we forgot how to care. We traded the tribe for the waiting room. We survived the ancient world, but we lost the very thing that kept us alive in the first place.